So you're here in Israel, but you're very busy these days back in America as part of the transition team. In terms of Israel, in terms of the Middle East, how much is this really a new page, a new era?
Well, I think with every president of the United States, there's a new page. Whether or not it's a new book will be yet to be determined. But I think that you have seen already that Mr. Trump has different views about a relationship with Israel than President Obama has had, and I expect that Israel should look upon this as a new day.
The fact that the politicians in Israel were celebrating the day after the victory, that really Israel will be able to build in Jerusalem, Israel will be able to build in Judea and Samaria, was that too early, or are we seeing that those celebrations were justified?
Well, I think that all those were signs of hope that there would be a new day. And how that plays out, Mr. Netanyahu and Mr. Trump are going to have to talk and visit about things. They're both leaders now of their governments. Mr. Trump obviously has some knowledge about Israel. He's made a decision about who he wants to serve as his personal representative here in the ambassadorship. And I think that he's made clear he has a different direction, at least in terms of the relationship that he wants to go.
The fact that the two-state solution went out of the agenda of the party, is that really something that is going also not be mentioned at all?
Well, I think that the Republican Party had a very conservative platform, and they made many changes in that platform representing what people across the country believe about these things. But every new president has to get information in, has to learn what the geopolitical situation in the world is, and we don't dictate to other countries how they live. We want to be a country that advances the interest of individual people in other countries. But we want to have a good working relationship with the leaders of other representative governments, and of course, that's Israel.
What can you tell us about the future role of the son-in-law, if you could tell us anything, the Jewish son-in-law of Mr. Trump?
Well, I can tell you that he loves his son-in-law because that's been just quite apparent. And, you know, when you have a great relationship with your in-laws, that's such a positive thing. So I think that all of Mr. Trump's children, I think, including Jared, his son-in-law, will have the president's ear. He will have the benefit of learning from them what they know and what their experiences are and what their instincts are and what their beliefs are. But Mr. Trump, I think, has shown himself through the years as a very successful businessman, as someone who listens very well, and then he decides what course is best for him to take.
The first visit of President Obama to the area was to Cairo, not at all to Jerusalem. Any thoughts and any ideas that you're giving the next president about his first visit to the Middle East?
Well, the Heritage Foundation doesn't make travel recommendations. However, personally speaking, I would strongly encourage Mr. Trump to come to Israel. It's our greatest friend and ally in the Middle East, not to say that we don't have other allies and friends. But I think you have to do, it's a good idea to show respect to your friends, and coming to Israel, I think, would be a good first step.
One of the fears we are hearing in Israel is about the connection to Russia, and then Russia, of course, to Syria. Do you feel that this is something to a real concern in Israel?
Well, I think the one thing that all Israelis have to pay attention to with Mr. Trump is he's now on the world stage as a world leader. World leaders have to deal with other world leaders. It's important. It's necessary. And so I don't think they should worry, but to use my old boss's phrase, trust but verify. They should always make their views known, both through their representatives here in Israel, but then through their friends and family in the United States of America. Make sure the President of the United States knows what their concerns are, what's on their minds and their hearts. And then you have to trust but verify.
Your old boss would be?
Ronald Reagan.
So, just to end with a few words about the similarities, are there really? Many people were mentioning Ronald Reagan. We're talking about someone who came in from nowhere or from somewhere, but somewhere else, and was a good surprise.
Well, Ronald Reagan was, I think, the most successful president in my lifetime, and certainly the most successful conservative leader in many, many, many years. People underestimated him around the world. People said he was a cowboy who was going to start wars right away. And here was a man who restored America's status in the world, who restored our military, who worked with Margaret Thatcher and Pope John Paul II to turn the ship of state and transcend communism. Here was a man who inherited the worst economy since the Depression and turned that around. He cut taxes, he cut regulations, he encouraged the entrepreneurial spirit of Americans to get going, and they did. And we began in 1982 when his tax plan kicked in, the longest period of economic growth in the history of the United States of America.
And I could easily translate that from compliments to Reagan to your hopes regarding Trump.
Well, I think absolutely. He's inherited a slightly different situation in the world, but also a terrible economy. And I think that, if he follows the Reagan prescription, peace through strength, cutting taxes, working with your friends overseas, he could have a successful presidency too.
So you're on your way back to America. What are you going to bring back this time? Back to the work with the transition team?
Well, I will be returning on Wednesday, and Thursday I'll be spending all day at the office. I land Thursday morning. I'll spend all day at the office. I will be communicating, obviously, with the internet all this week with both folks back in my home office and people on the transition team.
With the message coming from Israel also, coming at least from your stay here?
Well, I've already told folks this is where I am, meeting with our friends here and taking the temperature on the new president, and I'll share with them what I hear.